It usually starts quietly, not with a thunderstorm of doubt, but with a whisper that stirs in your chest late at night. When everything is still and your breath feels heavier than it should. It's the kind of question that doesn't always have a voice, but somehow takes up all the space in the room. What if I never shine? What if I live this entire life and never become extraordinary? You don't always say it out loud. Sometimes you just scroll through other people's highlight reels and feel the small ache of invisibility in your ribs. Sometimes you nod at a friend's promotion, or a sibling's engagement, or someone else's child winning an award, and you smile because you're happy for them. But inside, you're asking quietly, what about me? You're not jealous. You're just tired of wondering when it will be your turn to matter. In a world so obsessed with being special, we rarely talk about what it means to live a life that's simply present, steady, unremarkable to everyone else, but deeply lived. You do your job. You pay your bills. You love your family, even when it's hard. You try to sleep at night with a heart that feels restless and loyal all at once. But still, the question lingers. It haunts people like you and me, who are used to being in the middle row, who were never the best at sports, who didn't get straight A's, who didn't go viral, who aren't on track or ahead of schedule, who wake up each day and just try, not to conquer, but to cope. And that question, it grows louder with age. Because when you're young, the world keeps telling you, you're just getting started. But one day, you wake up and realize, you're no longer just starting. You're somewhere in the middle. And that fear creeps in. What if this is it? What if this quiet life, this humble job, this small apartment, this circle of friends, this dog-eared journal full of half-finished poems, what if this is all I ever have? When I was 15, my high school counselor asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up. I said I didn't know. So she asked, well, what do you want to be remembered for? I didn't have an answer. Back then, I thought everyone would be remembered for something. I thought that was a given, that the world had space for everyone's name to be etched in something permanent, stone, memory, legacy. I've since realized that's not true. Most people will not be remembered, not in a big, obvious way. Their names won't be printed in history books. They won't trend. They won't even be brought up at dinner tables beyond a generation or two. But here's the radical truth. Maybe being remembered isn't the point. Maybe the point is how you lived when no one was watching. There's a bakery down the street from where I live. It opens at 4 a.m. Rain or shine, the lights are always on by then. There's a woman who works there. I don't know her name. She wears the same soft green apron every morning, hair tucked in a neat bun. She doesn't smile much, but she always remembers my order. Black coffee, 1 cinnamon roll, warmed. One morning, I asked her, "How long have you been working here?" She paused. 18 years, she said. Then added, "Ever since my son was born." I nodded, didn't ask more, but I wanted to. I wanted to know what kind of life she'd built in that shop. How many sunrises she'd seen before the city woke up. How many days she powered through even when she didn't feel strong. She'll never be on the cover of a magazine, but something about her made me feel like the world was okay. Like someone, somewhere, was holding it together, quietly. You see, not everyone is a firework. Some people are porch lights. They don't explode. They don't make noise. They don't draw crowds. But they stay on. Night after night. Rain after rain. When you need direction, when you've lost your keys, when you feel too tired to face the dark, they are there, glowing softly. They don't demand attention. They offer comfort. We don't talk about those people enough. You, maybe. You reading this? You who always show up for others. You who remember birthdays. You who hold space in conversations without rushing to speak. You who make room for others to rest. Who carry groceries for your elderly neighbor. Who text your friends, "I'm here," when they don't respond for days. You think that isn't special, but you're wrong. You are the glue, the thread, the pause in the noise. You are the reason someone else still believes in kindness. When I was 8 years old, I thought I'd be famous by now. By 25, I imagined I'd be rich, adored, accomplished, maybe a little bit mysterious. Now I'm 34, and some nights I cry in the shower. Some mornings, I take 3 tries to get out of bed. I'm not famous. I don't have a 6-figure income. I haven't published that novel. My apartment is small. My fridge has expired yogurt and half a lemon. But I have a plant that keeps growing, even though I forgot to water it last week. I have friends who text, "Did you eat today?" I have a body that aches sometimes, but still carries me. I have a heart that's been broken, but still beats with unreasonable hope. I have love to give. I have stories to tell. I have mornings to wake up to. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. There are people in this world who live entire lifetimes without ever seeing their name written in bold. People who won't be celebrated in graduation speeches, won't be profiled in glossy magazines, won't have books or movies made about their lives. But they exist. They love. They lose. They try again. They are the ones no one writes songs about, but whose existence carries weight in the quietest, most unshakable way. Let me tell you about a man I used to know. He was the night security guard at the public library. Worked there for almost 2 decades. He wasn't talkative, didn't share much about himself. But every single night, he'd walk the halls with a flashlight, check each floor, then settle into a small stool behind the front desk, reading old crime novels and sipping instant coffee from a cracked thermos. One night, I asked him why he chose that job. He shrugged and said, "I like the silence." Years later, after he passed, I learned from a librarian that he had once been a teacher, lost his wife in a car crash, left his job because the classroom became too quiet, without her laugh echoing in the halls. So he found a new kind of silence, one he could bear. No one ever told that story, but I think about him often, because people like him are the ones who hold up the world while the rest of us are looking away. We live in a culture that rewards noise, make a splash, build a brand, go viral, be undeniable. But not everyone's truth is loud. Not every gift is designed for display. Some are soft, private, tender, like an old photograph you keep in a drawer. Not because it's worth money, but because it holds something you can't explain. My mother used to wake up every day at 5:30 a.m. She never set an alarm. Her body just knew. She would make coffee, feed the dog, water the plants, check on her aging parents, prepare breakfast for my father, iron his shirt, pack his lunch, and somehow still had time to sit quietly on the porch and write in her tiny notebook before waking me for school. I never once heard her complain. She was not on social media. She didn't have a college degree. She rarely bought new clothes. But she had a kind of stillness in her that could calm even the most anxious part of me. When I got older, I asked her why she never wanted more. She smiled and said, "More of what?" And it struck me. She wasn't chasing anything. She was simply living, fully, gently, presently. She didn't need fireworks to feel the joy of the sky. She just needed a little sun, a cup of tea, and someone she loved to come home to. We keep measuring worth by volume, but maybe we're using the wrong scale. Maybe greatness isn't in how many people notice you, but in how much you notice. Notice when someone's voice trembles. Notice when your friend's eyes don't match their smile. Notice the way the air changes before a storm, or how your cat always sleeps facing the door. Maybe that's the kind of brilliance we should be chasing. The kind that feels, not the kind that shouts. There's a janitor at a hospital I visit sometimes. He walks slowly, mop in hand, humming softly under his breath. I once watched him pause outside the oncology wing, take a small notebook from his pocket, and write something down. Curious, I asked, "What are you writing?" He said, "Names. I keep a list of the people I pray for." He wasn't a chaplain. He wasn't assigned to patients. He wasn't paid to care. But every day, as he cleaned the halls, he remembered. And that is what the world forgets to honor. The people who care when no one's looking. The people who remember names. The people who keep praying long after the rest of us forget. If you ever feel like your life is too small, like you've done nothing grand, like the sum of your years can't be seen from the outside, remember this. There is nothing small about kindness, nothing minor about consistency, nothing ordinary about choosing love over ego again and again. And if the only thing you ever do in this life is love someone well, you've already changed the world in a way most never will. There's a man who lives 2 floors above me, early 60s, maybe older. Every morning, he takes out the trash wearing the same navy sweater and brown sandals, no matter the weather. He moves slowly, like his bones are negotiating with gravity. We've shared the elevator 100 times, never spoke beyond a nod. But one day, I got home early from work. He was sitting outside the building, holding a small bouquet of flowers. "Nice flowers," I said. He looked up, a bit startled. "They're for my wife," he answered. Today would have been our 40th anniversary. I didn't know what to say, so I sat next to him. We didn't speak again for 5 minutes. Then, without turning to look at me, he said, "She used to love white chrysanthemums. She'd fill the apartment with them every fall. After she passed, I kept forgetting what day it was. Now I buy them each year, so I don't forget her again." He smiled at the ground, a tired, honest kind of smile. Grief is strange, he added. Some days I think I've moved on. Other days I swear I can hear her humming in the kitchen. The most powerful stories are often the quietest, the ones whispered between strangers, the ones never posted, never filmed, never turned into podcasts, just lived. Like the teenager who walks her younger brother to school every day because their dad left and their mom works 2 shifts. She ties his shoes. She packs his lunch. She makes sure he memorizes his spelling words. And she still tries to pass her chemistry exams. No one claps when she gets home, but she's holding together an entire world, quietly. Or the bus driver who memorizes every passenger's name, who greets the elderly with, "Hey champ," who plays jazz softly from the dashboard, who waits that extra 10 seconds when he sees someone running toward the stop. He isn't on a TED Talk, but he gives more peace to more people than most motivational speakers ever will. We like heroes with capes, but what about the heroes in hairnets, in scrubs, in faded uniforms, the ones washing dishes at midnight, the ones folding someone else's laundry, the ones driving food deliveries to strangers they'll never meet? They don't go viral, but they go deep. They are the infrastructure of care, the quiet scaffolding of society, and yet they often go unseen, because we are taught to admire flash, not faithfulness. That hit me, because we forget change doesn't always look like a big reveal. Sometimes it looks like a quiet morning, a day without relapse, a small choice to be kind when it would have been easier not to be. There's a myth we tell ourselves, that unless we've been seen, we haven't done anything worth seeing. But that's a lie, because love isn't less real when it's private. Kindness isn't less valuable when it's quiet. Growth isn't less meaningful when it's unseen. You don't need an audience to become who you're meant to be. And so to the one who wakes up early to open the shop, to check on the kids, to walk the dog, to breathe through the anxiety and still face the day, you are not invisible. You are not behind. You are not missing out. You are living a life that matters in the ways that truly last. You are the light, and if no one ever writes a song about you, write one for yourself. Sing it in your heart as you make coffee. Hum it as you do the dishes. Let it be the anthem of a life well lived. Not because the world noticed, but because you did. And sometimes that's all that truly counts. There's a house in my hometown with peeling blue paint and wind chimes on the porch. Growing up, we all called it Miss Eliza's place. She lived there alone. No family, no car, no visitors, except the stray cats she fed. She wasn't warm. She wasn't known for cookies or kind smiles. But every Halloween, she left candy outside her door with a handwritten note. Take only what you need. Leave some for the next soul. We didn't think much of her. We joked, whispered stories about her being a witch. And when she passed, most people barely noticed, except the postman, who cried. He told me once she was the only one who asked how my mom was doing after surgery. It stuck with me, because no one ever taught us to measure a life like that, by the people who grieve quietly when you're gone, by the spaces that feel a little emptier without you, by the cats that wait at the door. We often imagine legacy as something grand, a name etched in stone, a speech played over violin. But what if legacy is smaller than that? What if it's a warm meal at the right time, a shared umbrella, a kindness offered without expectation? What if your life ripples through others, not with noise, but with stillness? There's a small photo frame on my bookshelf. Inside it is not a picture of a loved one, but a quote I clipped from a yellowing page. The most beautiful souls are often never known until they're gone, because their light was never meant to blind, only to warm. I read it often, especially on days when I feel like I'm not enough, not smart enough, not brave enough, not ahead in life. And I remember, maybe I was never meant to shine in the way I once hoped. Maybe I was meant to be the shade under which someone rested, the quiet in someone's chaos, the pause before someone broke, the calm voice in the storm, and maybe that is its own kind of brilliance. So if you're listening to this right now, tucked into bed, exhausted from a day no one noticed, carrying the weight of invisible victories, know this: your life matters, your goodness matters, your stillness matters, not because the world sees it, but because you are living it, fully, honestly, patiently. And maybe you won't shine. Maybe no one will ever stand and applaud you. But somewhere, someone breathes easier because you exist. So tonight, close your eyes without the ache of unfinished ambitions. Let go of the story that you have to be spectacular. Be steady. Be kind. Be here. You are enough. You have always been enough. We've all been told that love is supposed to feel like fireworks, like movie endings, like violins swelling in the background while someone runs through the rain to confess their undying devotion. But real love is the sound of the front door unlocking at the same time every evening. It's the grocery list written in 2 different handwritings. It's the same blanket being shared on a couch that's seen too many winters. It's silence, not awkward, but full, comfortable, anchored. The kind of love that doesn't make headlines, but makes a home. I once knew a woman who had been married for 42 years. Her husband had dementia during the last 7. Every morning, she would help him dress, same blue sweater, same gray socks. She'd hand him the same bowl of oatmeal. She'd sit beside him while he asked, for the 5th time, where their son was. And each time, she would answer like it was the first. One day, I asked her, "Isn't it hard to say the same things over?" And she looked at me with the gentlest eyes and said, "Maybe, but I'm not here to be efficient. I'm here to be his memory when his forgets how to be." That is the kind of presence no love song captures, but it is, without question, sacred. Presence isn't flashy. It doesn't trend. You won't find it captured well in photographs. Because presence isn't about being noticed. It's about noticing. It's in the way someone places your cup on the table, handle facing you, because they remember you're left-handed. It's in how they open the window 10 minutes before you get home, so the room smells like the garden you love, but always forget to tend. It's packing an extra granola bar in your bag without telling you. Charging your phone when you fall asleep on the couch. Keeping a sweater in the car for you, just in case. It's not loud, but it echoes in the spaces where love is needed most. There's a boy I tutored once, 10 years old, struggling in math. 1. His mother worked nights. His father wasn't in the picture. Every Thursday, his grandfather would walk him to the library and wait outside. 2 hours. Never once came in. Just sat on the bench, book in lap, thermos of tea in hand. One day it rained. Really poured. I looked out the window and saw him, soaked to the bone, still there. When I rushed out with an umbrella, I asked, "Why didn't you go inside?" He smiled. He doesn't like it when I'm out of sight, so I stay where he can always find me. That moment never left me, because presence isn't just being there. It's being where someone knows they can reach you, where they can find you, even if they don't say a word. We are conditioned to believe that showing up has to be grand. But the truth? Sometimes presence is just breathing next to someone while they cry. Not fixing, not offering wisdom. Just sitting still and letting your existence say, "You are not alone." That's the kind of healing no doctor prescribes, and the kind of memory no one forgets. I once spent 3 days in a hospital waiting room, waiting for someone I loved to wake up from surgery. The machines beeped. The air smelled like bleach and anxiety. The nurse on night shift didn't say much, but each night she'd bring me a cup of warm water. No words, just a nod. On the last day, I thanked her. She said, "I saw you weren't eating. I figured you could at least drink something warm." We never exchanged names, but I will never forget her presence. Because sometimes the people who stay quietly near us are the ones who save us from falling apart. Think about the people in your life, the ones who picked up your call on the third ring, who replied to your late-night text with, "I'm up," who drove 2 hours just to sit with you, who brought you soup, not because you asked. Think about those who stayed when you had nothing to offer. No energy, no laughter, no answers. They didn't come for your brightness. They came for your being. That is presence. And maybe you've been that person too. Maybe you held space for someone who didn't know how to say thank you. Maybe you kept calling when they stopped answering. Maybe you prayed for them in the dark. Maybe you forgave them before they even knew they'd hurt you. That counts, even if they never say it, even if they never come back, even if no one claps. Love, true, consistent, grounded love, often goes unrecognized, but it always leaves a mark. There's a story I heard once. A woman had a friend who sent her a voice note every single morning. "Good morning, just wanted to say I love you." When the friend died suddenly, the woman kept all the voice notes. She'd play one each morning. Sometimes she'd cry. Sometimes she'd smile. But always she felt seen. Point 0. Presence doesn't end with absence. It lingers. In voice notes, in teacups, in old sweaters, and half-finished journals. It weaves itself into our routines, and we carry it forward. So if you ever wonder whether your presence matters, if your being there, day after day, showing up without fanfare, is worth anything at all, I promise you, it is. You may not be remembered for the things you say, but you will be remembered for the spaces you held, for the hands you didn't let go of, for the light you became when someone needed just enough to make it to tomorrow. And that, dear soul, is everything. We grow up believing that if we just love enough, stay long enough, try hard enough, people will stay. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes presence isn't enough. And that truth, it can fracture something inside you that may never go back to its original shape. There was a woman named Lynn I knew years ago. She and her partner had been together since college. 15 years. Everyone called them unbreakable. She stayed when he lost his job. She stayed through the depression, through the forgetfulness, through the drinking. She stayed every day, every night, every silence. And then one day, he left. No big fight, no betrayal. Just an envelope on the table and a suitcase already gone. I saw her months later. She looked smaller, not weaker, just folded into herself. He said he couldn't breathe around me anymore, she told me. I gave him everything, every ounce of patience, every part of me. And then she whispered something I've never forgotten. Maybe I was the air, but he needed wind. There's a grief that doesn't come with funerals. The grief of being left while still holding space. Of still setting the extra plate at dinner long after they've stopped coming home. Of memorizing the sound of their keys in the door and waiting for it, even years later, even knowing it won't come. One of the hardest lessons life will teach you is that love is not a guarantee, not even the gentle kind, not even the kind that shows up, that stays late, that never raises its voice. Sometimes people leave because they can't stay, because they don't know how, because they're fighting battles they never found words for. And sometimes they leave even though they still love you, because they're tired, because being with you reminds them of the parts of themselves they haven't forgiven, because healing beside someone can feel like drowning next to them if they don't know how to swim yet. There's this myth in movies that if it's real love, they'll come back. But real life isn't a script. And some people don't return, even if they wanted to, even if you waited. And that doesn't mean the love was fake. It just means it belonged to a season that ended without asking your permission. I knew a man once, James. He was with his partner for 8 years. They lived in a tiny studio apartment with 3 plants and a shared bookshelf. They made pancakes every Sunday. They had rituals, songs, secret handshakes. And one day, his partner packed up and left a single sticky note. I love you, but I can't grow here. James spent months blaming himself. He replayed every fight, every missed moment, every time he didn't notice the sadness behind her jokes. I thought being there was enough, he told me. I thought love was about staying, but maybe it's also about letting someone go when their wings outgrow your room. And that is the ache presence can't always heal. When you've given all you could, but it still wasn't the kind of enough they needed. And you start asking questions like, what did I miss? Was I too much? Was I not enough? Why did they stop choosing me? You turn those questions over in your chest like sharp stones, until your ribs bruise from the weight of the asking. But here's a truth that might save you someday. Sometimes it wasn't you. Sometimes they just needed to leave, not because you failed, but because staying meant they couldn't find themselves. We romanticize endurance. We say things like, Love means never giving up. But love also means knowing when the cost of staying becomes a debt neither of you can afford to pay anymore. Love sometimes means walking away before resentment replaces tenderness. And if you've ever been the one left behind, if you still sleep on one side of the bed because the other feels haunted, if you still check your phone at midnight, hoping they remembered your birthday, if your chest still tightens every time you hear a song you once slow danced to in the kitchen, I see you, and I want you to know your pain is real, your grief is valid, your worth is not measured by someone else's decision to stay or go. You are not just the aftermath of someone else's leaving. You are the presence that remained. The presence that stayed faithful even when no one stayed for you. And that is not a weakness. That is a kind of courage the world rarely applauds, but desperately needs. There's this line I read once: just because they left doesn't mean you weren't a home. And I believe that, because sometimes people walk away from warmth, not because it wasn't comforting, but because it made them realize how cold they've become inside, and they weren't ready to thaw. You, who waited, who stayed, who believed in one more try, you are a home. You still are, even if the rooms are quiet now. Sometimes, presence isn't enough to keep someone, but it's enough to keep you whole, to remind you that you showed up with everything you had, that you loved deeply, that you stood in the doorway long after they were gone, just in case they changed their mind. And one day, you'll close that door, not in bitterness, but in peace, because you'll know you gave your presence, you gave your tenderness, you gave your truth, and that will never be wasted. No one really prepares you for what comes after the leaving, after the silence, after the echo of someone's footsteps stops at your door forever. We talk about heartbreak like it's dramatic, tears, wine, a montage of rebirth. But real recovery, it's quiet, tedious, unremarkable. It's brushing your teeth again. It's doing the laundry, even when the shirt still smells like them. It's throwing out the expired soy sauce they left in your fridge. It's standing in the grocery store, staring at the peanut butter aisle, wondering if you still like crunchy, or if that was just their preference. Healing is not cinematic. It's forgetting what their voice sounds like and panicking about it. It's remembering suddenly while shampooing your hair and letting the water hide your tears. It's standing in your kitchen at 2 a.m., eating toast over the sink, trying not to cry too loud because your roommate has a meeting in the morning. Nobody tells you that moving on doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like betrayal, like erasing a poem you spent years writing just because the pen ran out of ink. You keep their number. You don't dial it, but you keep it, like an open window for someone who's already flown south. Some days you'll feel okay. You'll laugh. You'll listen to music again. You'll notice that the sun still comes up even when you forgot to care. And then other days, you'll unravel at the smell of their cologne on a stranger in the elevator. Healing is not linear. It loops, it twists, it doubles back when you thought you were almost done. And that's okay. You may find yourself angry, not just at them, at yourself, for staying too long, for not seeing it coming, for hoping past the expiration date of what was real. You'll want to rewrite the ending, to send one last text, to finally say what you meant to say before the silence got too loud. But don't. Let silence be. Let your peace be the final word. You'll start to rediscover small things, the songs you skipped because they made you think of them, the way your voice sounds when no one else is listening, the hobbies you abandoned, the dreams you paused. You'll buy new bedsheets. You'll move the furniture. You'll fill your home with new sounds, podcasts, plants, laughter with friends. You'll reclaim your space, not in protest, but in renewal. I once knew a woman who went through a difficult divorce. She told me something that stuck with me. After he left, I didn't know how to be alone, so I started reading books out loud to myself at night. It felt less lonely that way. She said she fell in love with her voice again. That's what healing looks like sometimes. Falling in love with yourself in slow, awkward, beautiful ways. You'll have to forgive yourself too, for what you missed, for what you accepted, for the parts of yourself you silenced just to keep the peace. You'll realize that staying was a form of love, but so is leaving, when it means choosing yourself, and no one claps when you do it. No one throws a party when you begin to choose peace over the familiar ache of being misunderstood. But you'll feel it in your shoulders, in your breath, in the way you walk into a room without needing to shrink. That's growth, the quiet kind, the kind no one posts about, but is more sacred than any before and after photo. You'll stop explaining your grief. You'll stop saying, "It's been a while, but I'm still not over it." You'll stop apologizing for how long it's taking, because healing isn't timed. It's earned, slowly, with grace, with every choice to not self-destruct, even when destruction seems easier. And then, without warning, you'll notice yourself smiling on a random Tuesday afternoon. Not because of anyone else, but because the light through your window made a pattern on the floor, and you realized you didn't feel. You felt whole. Not perfectly, but honestly. Recovery isn't always visible. It's the way your body begins to sleep through the night again. The way your skin feels calm under soft sheets. The way you stop rereading old messages. The way you no longer hesitate when someone says, "Tell me about yourself." Because now you have something to say that doesn't include someone else's name. You will love again. Maybe someone new. Maybe just yourself. Maybe both. But you'll love with clearer eyes, with softer hands, with boundaries that don't apologize for existing. Because you know now that presence is powerful, but self-presence, that's unshakable. There's a strange peace that settles in when you finally stop waiting to be chosen. At first, it feels like surrender, like giving up, like letting go of the last thread of hope you kept hidden, even from yourself. But then, a new kind of air begins to fill your lungs. Quiet, still, yours. You start breathing, not because someone is watching, not because you're hoping they'll come back, but because you deserve to take up space, even in your aloneness. We spend so much of our lives trying to be picked by partners, by jobs, by friends, by someone in the crowd who will finally say, you're the one. But what happens when no one says it? What if the applause never comes? What if the stage stays empty? What if the person you would have chosen every day never chose you back? Then what? Then you learn to choose yourself, not in bitterness, not in revenge, but in quiet affirmation. There's a man who lives 2 houses down from me, retired, no wife, no kids. Every morning he walks to the corner coffee shop, orders the same drink, and sits by the window. One day I asked if he ever got lonely. He looked out at the street and said, "Sometimes, but being alone is easier than explaining myself to someone who only ever half listened." And I understood, because sometimes being unchosen saves you from having to become small in order to be loved. There's peace in being unchosen when you realize you no longer have to audition. No more shrinking to fit their vision. No more silencing your joy to match their emotional weather. No more tiptoeing around their moods, their trauma, their inability to meet you where you already stood, wide open. You begin to understand that not being chosen wasn't a reflection of your inadequacy, but their incapacity. And that realization, it softens the shame. It steadies your breath. You'll stop editing your stories. You'll stop minimizing your pain. You'll stop smiling because there's no longer anyone you need to convince that you are worth the love you crave. You'll look in the mirror and finally say, "I'll stay this time, even if no one else does." And that promise, to remain by your own side, is the most sacred vow you'll ever make. I once met a woman in her 50s, never married, lived alone in a small apartment filled with books and plants. I asked if she ever felt like she missed something. She smiled. "I missed plenty, but I also made space for things others never had time for. I watched the moon rise slowly. I memorized the names of birds. I stayed up late with poetry. I was never chosen the way I hoped, but I chose so many beautiful things in return." That stayed with me, because we measure our lives by who loved us loudly. But sometimes, the quiet things we choose instead, they save us. You will find comfort in your own company. You'll take yourself to the movies. You'll buy flowers for your own table. You'll learn how to enjoy silence without needing someone to fill it. You'll realize that your presence is whole, even when no one reflects it back. And maybe one day, someone will walk into your life and see the garden you've grown within yourself. But even if they don't, you'll still bloom, because the blooming was never for them. And so, if you were never chosen, or if you were chosen once but left behind, know this: your worth is not a democracy. It doesn't depend on votes. You are not valuable because of who picks you. You are valuable because you exist, because you stayed when it was hard, because you kept going when the road felt endless, because you kept believing in tenderness even after it broke your heart. This world will try to convince you that visibility equals value, that relationships validate your wholeness, that to be loved is to be real. But you are real. You are whole. You are sacred. Even in the silence, even in the waiting, even in the years no one clapped for you. And maybe, just maybe, being unchosen gave you the space to choose more deeply, to choose solitude over noise, to choose self-respect over validation, to choose healing over rushing into something half-hearted, to choose a life that, though quiet, rings true. So tonight, if you find yourself lying in bed, wondering why it never worked out, why they left, why you weren't the one, why it hurts so much to care, let it go, not because it didn't matter, but because you do. Let your breath be the applause. Let your peace be the proof. Let your own heartbeat be enough music for one more night.